So in the previous class, we were talking about origin of chordata and where we had discussed the various theories, especially Dipluga theory of origin of chordata. And while studying or describing that postulation proposed by few zoologists, so we discussed the evidence of affinities in which we discussed metamerism, orientation of nerve cord, cleavage, gastrulation, fate of blastopore, coelom, formation of mesoderm, mesodermal skeleton, ciliated bands, nervous system, energy source like phosphoarginine or phosphocreatine and their kinases. And while going through these affinity evidence of affinities, we got to know that there is no direct relation between protostomia and deuterostomia. So we cannot say that the animals belonging to Spiralia or protostomia are closest relative of protochordates or chordates. Then we discussed about this flow chart in which you are seeing the source of energy in protozoa, that is arginine, arginine only. And in the end of the previous talk, I was saying that only the vertebrates, the cephalochordates, and the kynodermates are having phosphoarginine as well as phosphocreatine. Okay, and uh, their kinase as well. So that means uh, the larval form of echinodermates or the larval form of tunicates, okay, or the larval forms of cephalochordates or cephalocordate itself could be the closest relative of the vertebrates, right? Now, after discussing these evidence of affinities as well as discussing this flow chart of source of energy, on the basis of above facts, it is exceedingly unlikely that such animals like annulates, which was the first hypothesis that some annulates gave rise to chordates. So, after having discussed these all, evidence of affinities, we can say that it is exceedingly unlikely that such animals have given rise to chordates with their very different developmental process. Okay. Now, then we have to see that in which age of time the chordates evolved and in which age of time the kynodermates evolved and in which age of time the protochordates evolved, because in the previous slide source of energy we discussed, and we know that either the kynodermates, because they are having these two source of energy, or the tunicates or the cephalochordates may be the closest relative of the chordates. So we have to see while studying the available sources, fossil records. On the basis of that, we can say that in which era or period of time these chordates evolved or the kynodermates evolved. So we know that the Ordovician time, the kynodermates evolved. Simultaneously, the chordates also evolved in this age of time. Okay, and if you see that in the Cenozoic time, means the present era, these are also living. Echinodermates and chordates also existing. So that means they evolved simultaneously. But the question is, how did they evolve? How what the kynodermates caused to become chordates, or how they took up the features of chordates? This is the point. Okay, or if the echinodermates did not give rise to the chordates, then who were the animals? Who were the other urochordates or cephalochordates who gave rise to protochordates or the chordates itself, and what features, what morphological and anatomical features occurred in these early kynodermates or protochordates who ultimately became the higher chordates. Now, echinodermate origin of chordates. So this is another theory after Dipleura concept of origin of chordata, because although we know that the Dipleura is a hypothetical creature or that belongs to echinodermate group, and then we say that since there is a close relationship between the dipleural larva of echinodermate and the larval forms of the protochordates. So that means the echinodermate origin of chordates is one of the possibility. So this theory was given by Muller, 1860, and it is based on the comparative studies of larval stages of echinodermates and hemichordates. So the tornarial larva of hemichordates resembles echinoderm larvae such as Bipinnaria, Auricularia, Dipleurula or Doliolaria, which all possess ciliary bands and apical tuft of cilia. So there are some similarities between the larval forms of echinodermates and protochordates. Then the Muller and Garstang and Beers proposed that echinodermal larvae gave rise to chordate by neoteny. So this is important because we know that the echinodermate larvae, like the dipleural larva, as the hypothesis says, dipleural concept of origin of chordata. So because they were having ciliary bands and some other structure like apical tuft of cilia, so they gave rise protochordates or chordates by neoteny. Okay, and you must be recalling what is neoteny. Do you know what is neoteny? When the larval
सर लार्वा के जो कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स होते हैं वो अडल्ट जैसे होते हैं, एज इन बहुत इवॉल्व होता है सर लार्वा, और अडल्ट के
okay,
बहुत बेकार कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स होते हैं.
actually when the larva starts reproducing, okay, it means then reproduction starts at the larval stage itself. Then it is called neoteny, right? So that means the dipleural like larva or maybe some other larval forms of echinodermate who are having ciliary bands started reproduction. Okay, so they became the protochordates, and the discovery of fossil echinodermate like calcichordata. This is important. There was an echinoderm calcichordata from Ordovician period, almost 450 million years ago. Further confirms echinodermate's ancestry of chordates. So that means, as we discussed in one of the previous slide, that both the echinodermates and the chordates evolved in the same period, like Ordovician period around 450 million years ago. And this is the fossil record, Calcichordata, which belong to Echinodermata, and it shared some characteristics with the chordates. So the calcichordates, this is the impression of calcichordate, were asymmetrical animals which demonstrate affinities with both echinodermates as well as chordates, but their skeleton is made of calcium carbonate, whereas in vertebrates the bones are made of calcium and phosphate. phosphate. So this is one difference. Then they had large pharynx. We are talking about the calcichordate with a series of gill slits, each covered with flaps for filter feeding, and a small segmented body and a posternal tail. A perforated pharynx for filter feeding appears to have evolved in diverse groups of animals during Cambrian or Ordovician period, which when planktons were abundant in water. So we know there are three basic chordate characteristics which are shown by all chordates, and there are some characteristics like perforated pharynx or pharyngeal gill slits are there in the calcichordates. So now, see we consider that the deuterostomes are the ancestors to the chordates. So this is one ancestral deuterostomes that is giving rise to, or there are two branches are emerging. So one is forming or leading to echinoderms, and the another one which is again forming two branches, but before giving out two branches, due to the presence of notochord and dorsal hollow nerve cord and pharyngeal gill slits, post-anal tail, they produce the urochordates, and then again it gave rise to two branches, the cephalochordates, and before becoming the hagfishes and lamprey, cranium or skull evolved in the developmental process. So cranium or skull, elaboration of brain, paired sensory organs on head and neural crest cells. So then at this stage, when hagfish and lampreys were being made, again vertebral column evolved in between, and then from lampreys to the jaw vertebrates evolved. So while the jaw vertebrates evolved, again the hinged jaw and 2 sets of paired appendage also evolved in the in the developmental history of animals. So this is how these different types of animals like echinodermates, urochordates, cephalochordates, then agnathrans, and then gnathostomatans. These all evolved from the ancestral deuterostomes. Because we know that all these groups of animals show us basic characteristic, which is the deuterostome when the blastopore forms the anus, right? Then again, this is one thing, that the protostomes, we know that these are the animals who belong to the protostomes, and these are the animals who belong to the deuterostome. And the phylum Chordata, this is the ancestral bilaterian. Okay, like we are saying that ancestral deuterostome gave rise to these groups of animals. So the ancestral bilaterian, because this was the one of the characteristic that is commonly shared by the protocol, the non-chordates and chordates, the bilaterian. Okay, bilaterally symmetrical. So the ancestral bilaterian animals gave rise to the protostomes and the deuterostomes, and ultimately the deuterostome, we can say that the phylum Chordata is similarly evolved like in this fashion. Okay, now coming to the gas tank theory. So there are three diagrams we are seeing. The A1 is the auricularia larva gave rise to protochordates. So this is the protochordate, and this is the dorsal view of the protochordates. So what is happening in these three diagrams? So this is auricularia larva. You have to see the structure of this auricularia larva. This is mouth, then this is complete digestive tract opening to actually through anus. Then these are the longitudinal ciliary bands, and we know that in the echinodermate larval stage as well as the larval stage of protochordates, there are ciliary bands but which are longitudinally arranged, not horizontally or transversely arranged, like we see in the trophophore larva of annelids. Okay, and this is the coelom. So what happens? That means you can see the animal got elongated, means the larval form got elongated when it is being converted from auricularia to the protochordata, or when it is taking shape of any protochordate. So it got elongated first of all from at the anterior and posterior axis. Then you can see the pharynx got perforated. So these become the gill slits. So this is another characteristics of the what the chordates. Then another thing is that these longitudinal ciliary band somehow became the notochord. Okay, right? And this is what these are. This is, you can say, the vertebral column that is actually surrounding this notochord, neurochord, surrounding the neurochord. So this is how, because some changes took place in this auricularia larva, and it gave rise to early protochordates animal. So how chordates and vertebrates evolved? So according to Garstang, the Garstang theory says that due to neoteny, there may be three regions as per the Garstang. Okay, so this one is the due to neoteny, second is the due to pedomorphosis, and third one is the natural selection. And this is very important because so far, barring some recent studies, it is very much believed that the Garstang's theory is very much acceptable because of due to neoteny. Chordates evolved from a deuterostome larva like Diplura larva or Bipinnaria or any echinodermate larva in an Ascidian. Remember that tadpole larva is the Ascidian. The tadpole larva is the larva of Ascidian, and this larva shows all chordate characteristics, three basic chordate characteristics. In fact, the fourth one also, the post-anal tail. So that means if the larval form of Ascidian like tadpole larva start reproduction in that stage, and that phenomenon is called the neoteny. So that means it is similar to the chordates, because the chordates have post-anal tail, the chordates have the dorsal tubular nerve cord, the chordates have the pharyngeal gill slit, and the chordates have the one more thing, notochord. Okay, these four characteristics are already being shown by the tadpole larva of Ascidian. The one thing is that it has to start feeding as well as it has to start reproduction. Okay, so because we know that Ascidian's larva leads a very short span of their life, and it has to go through the retrogressive metamorphosis. So if it somehow started feeding and other physiological processes as well as started reproduction, so it became the adult chordate. So due to the neoteny, The chordate evolved from a deuterostome larva in Ascidian when its larva was modified to a tadpole-like larva with a notochord, dorsal neurochord, endostyle, and this theory is called the de novo origin. Okay, so it evolved automatically, or you can say spontaneously. Okay, so the tadpole larva became the chordate, early chordates, by taking up some physiological process like eating, feeding, and reproduction. Then the second process, or you can say the way of becoming chordata from the deuterostome larva is due to pedomorphosis. And what is pedomorphosis? Tadpole-like larva becomes adult larvacean-like chordate through pedomorphosis. So what is pedomorphosis? This is also called the juvenilization. Okay, when the adult has some juvenile characteristics, some larval characteristics. So the adult is still showing some larval characteristics. So that means the Ascidian larva was having 4 characteristics: dorsal tubular neurochord, notochord, pharyngeal gill slits, and post-anal tail. And when the when the creature took the shape of chordate or early chordate, it is still having the 4 characteristics being shown, which were being shown by the Ascidian larva. So it is either the neoteny or the pedomorphosis. Because of that, the early chordates evolved. So this is fantastic hypothesis proposed by the Garstang, and it may be acceptable, and it should be acceptable unless and until we see some recent studies. Then these are the definitions of neoteny and the pedomorphosis. The neoteny means morphogenesis in dealing relative to reproductive maturity. Then pedomorphosis is the retention of juvenile or even larval traits into later stage. Then the third process is very, very important. Okay, so as per the neoteny or the pedomorphosis, okay, the chordates somehow evolved and they are having the larval characteristics. But what is the role of natural selection? So favor traits that continue to improve locomotion activity. So there were some characteristics which were being shown, which were present in the the larval stage or in the adult stage, in the early chordates, and the natural selection favored the locomotion and other activities which are which are shown by the chordates, like complex sensory organs, brain complex musculature, respiration, or addition of bones, and vertebrate condition means the vertebral column. So these were all the characteristics which were evolving, and because of the natural selection, they were protected, they were adapted, they were they were saved by the natural selection, or they were picked up by the natural selection. So this is how the chordates evolved from the uh, larval forms of the echinodermids, maybe due to the neoteny or pedomorphosis, and then it was the natural selection that retained these characteristics, advanced characteristics of the chordates. So the Garstang speculated that at some point larvae developed gonads and reproduced in the larval stage, and a new group of free swimming animals evolved. So this is adult Ascidian. We know that adult Ascidian do not have the true chordate characteristics, but we know they produce the tadpole larva. Okay, and this tadpole larva is having 4 basic characteristics. So this is a chordate, but the only thing is that it is not active. I mean, it does not show feeding and other physiological processes. It just shows some basic chordate characteristic, and then it undergoes through the reverse metamorphosis and it becomes the adult Ascidian. So at this stage, something happened with the larval, this tadpole larva of Ascidians. Okay, and this happened spontaneously, and then the natural selection protected these new characteristics. So what happened? The tadpole larva turned into the adult pedomorphic vertebrate ancestor. So this is adult pedomorphic adult vertebrate, and the larval characteristics are being shown by this animal. So this is pedomorphic animal, okay, which is still having the characteristics of the tadpole larva. Okay, or this larva itself as the neoteny says, that this larva, tadpole larva itself started reproduction. So when it started reproduction, when it started excretion, when it started taking up food, when it started circulation and other physiological processes, that means it is similar to the adult chordate. So okay, so either the neoteny, through the neoteny, or through the pedomorphosis, the adult chordates like ostracoderm evolved. Okay, so this is the one way of interpreting the hypothesis proposed by Garstang. So Garstang called this process neoteny. Somatic development is slowed, and a type of pedomorphosis, adult assumes traits previously seen in juvenile, in which juvenile or the larval traits appear in the adult body. So this diagram is illustrating the way the early chordates evolved through the adult ACDN. But at this stage, you can not say, or the Garstang is not saying that the kynodermates larval form uh, gave rise to the ostracoderm kind of animal, or produced the ostracoderm kind of animal. But we know that the Garstang says that the deuterostome larva, okay, and this is deuterostome, and the larval forms of echinodermids are also deuterostome. So that means we can say in any deuterostome larva, because in the previous slide, when this auricularia larva is supposed to be giving rise to or developing producing this adult protochordates, so that means due to the neoteny or the pedomorphosis, protochordates were evolved or were produced. Okay, so this is not that only the ACDN, adult ACDN were there behind the ostracoderm kind. There may be some uh, deuterostome larvae of echinodermid as well behind the formation or evolution of ostracoderm or early chordates. Now, this is the cladogram consistent with Garstang's view. Okay, so this is one cladogram I have prepared. So in this through this cladogram, you can also understand that how the chordates evolved. So this one is the some ancestor. So the Acidiaceae with tadpole that has evolved chordates characteristics. Okay, then this is line that is going to the going up to the vertebrates. Okay, so what happened during the process of evolution? There is one offshoot emerged as Acidiaceae. Then from this line of evolution, it gave rise to another line that produced the Thaliacea and then Larvaceae. So these three groups belong to the Urochordates. Okay, now on this line of evolution, what happened? In between, the cephalochordates evolved. But how the cephalochordates evolved from this ancestor, the early ancestor? So that means it was the neoteny or the pedomorphosis by which these animals evolved. Then due to the selection of increased swimming, etc., this is the natural selection. The characteristics which were which were favorable for the cephalochordates and advanced protochordates were selected by the nature. Okay, so this is how the cephalochordates evolved, and and then ultimately the vertebrates evolved from these cephalochordates, from not these cephalochordates, but during the process of uh, evolution. And the another thing is that between the Thaliacea and Larvaceae, neoteny also occurred. So in the process of evolution of chordates, neoteny may have occurred at two places. First, when the cephalochordates were produced, or urochordates were produced, and then between the Thaliacea and Larvaceae. So as per the As per the Garstang's scenario, neoteny occurred twice, first to form vertebrate line and later to form the Larvacean line. And this diagram is the ancestor adult remain sessile, while their motile larvae evolve progressively in two steps. First, a tadpole-like protochordate, and then a more advanced and fully motile form. So this is adult, which is stationary, sedentary, and then it produces a larva, and these are having the ciliary bands. So suppose this is an echinodermate. Okay, this is, you can say, the deuterostome that is producing this larval stage, which is motile, okay, free swimming because of the ciliary bands. Then from this stage to next stage, these are also sedentary, and they also produce the actively swimming creatures like tadpole larva. Okay, and ultimately from this stage, the early chordates evolved like Amphioxus. So this is the first stage in which the sedentary echinodermates produced the ciliary, the larvae which were having the ciliary bands, and they were active, they were free swimming, they were filter feeding, and because some changes occurred in the body of these larval forms, and this caused the development of these animals, sedentary animals, and from these sedentary animals, this larva, tadpole larva, evolved, and ultimately this tadpole larva produced the creatures like Amphioxus, which belong to the cephalochordates. Now, there is another way of explaining uh, this concept of origin of chordates. So it was born in 1960, then Jagestein in 1972, and Jolie in 1973, Nielsen 2001, and Cameron 2005. So I have put, clubbed all the information produced by these researchers, and they say that there may be some vermiform ancestor which is deuterostome, and there are two lines of evolution. Okay, so this is one line of evolution that produced the echinodermates. Okay, and the other line of evolution that produced the Amphioxus. And how come and this happened? That on this line, the first the hemichordates evolved, and then finally in between, when they were formed, the vermiform ancestors were evolving the echinodermates, this line of evolution automatically emerged, and they become the hemichordates, although they do not show the chordate characteristics, but they are quite similar to the echinodermates when we compare the larval forms of Tornaria, larval forms of this hemichordates like Tornaria, and the larval forms of echinodermates. So they are closely related. Then the vermiforms ancestor gave rise to the Amphioxus-like animals, but there were one offshoot that was closest to the uh, larval forms of Ascidians like the tadpole larva, and we know that the tadpole larvae are produced by the sedentary tunicates, and this has a separate line of evolution. So in this diagram, you are saying that there is no exact relationship between the hemichordates or the urochordates and the Amphioxus. So how the chordates evolved? So the main alternative to the GBR hypothesis. So there are three scientists. uh, these are initials of three scientists जो हमने which I talked about in the one of the slides. Okay, so they were Garstang and John Smuller, and in one of the slides we had discussed about these three scientists. So this is called actually the GBR hypothesis. Okay, so this was proposed by the three scientists. So Garstang is one of them. This was Bohr, and the R refers to some other scientists. So the ancestor adult is assumed to be a motile, roughly vermiform animal, either swimming or burrowing. So this line is talking about the vermiform ancestor present at this point. Okay, then a selection of its descendants are shown, but the ancestral form is not, as its exact nature remains a matter of conjecture. So nobody knows what exactly happened while evolution of these animals from the vermiform ancestors as per the scientists. Then the ancestral larvae, assuming assuming there were any, can be disregarded in scenario of this type, and all sedentary forms are then derived. So in the case of the tunicates, the tadpole larvae would be an evolutionary relic. Okay, so this tadpole larva is evolutionary relic, probably much reduced from its original form, rather than a progenitor or ancestor of segmented chordates. Okay, so all in all, we can say that the chordates evolved from, as per this hypothesis proposed by these scientists, that there were some vermiform ancestors which are actually the deuterostomes, and during the in the process of evolution, some advanced characteristics occurring automatically, and ultimately it became the Amphioxus kind of animals. Then this is very interesting thing, or you can say the gene expression. Recently, there is a study done by these three scientists, and the pattern of expression of body segments. The figure shows the extent of the expression domains of an assortment of axial patterning genes. Okay, so there is a pattern of organs in the body, and these are controlled by different genes. So if we say that if any animal is closest to any other animal, that in that case, the gene which controls the pattern of organs in the body of one animal should be controlling same pattern in the other animal which is supposed to be closest to that animal. But here, in that case, this is the protochordate, this is the tadpole larva, and this is the hemichordates. So we say we know that the genes which are controlling the pattern of organs in this animal are not actually controlling the pattern of organs in this animal. So we cannot say that the Tornaria kind larva or the tadpole larva are closely related, not at all. So the Galstang theory gets fizzled out here when we compare the evolution of Tornaria larva and the Dipleural larva and the other chordates like cephalochordates animals. So we see that these genes are not uh, actually controlling the pattern of organs in the way they should have. So what is the inference? What is the conclusion? The Garstang idea does not tell about condensed nervous system from a diffuse one, which is found in the hemichordates as well as in the echinoderms, and the origin of new body plan by pedomorphosis. So it is silent. The Garstang is silent on these 2 points. Then the molecular data provides increasingly strong evidence that both adult tunicates and the Dipleura type larvae lack a full complement of body regions, and so are poor candidate, means poor uh, examples, or you can say candidates to be transitional form in any evolutionary scenario leading to advanced chordates. So the molecular data has so far been effective in terms of reducing the number of viable hypotheses, but less so in generating new ideas about the true nature of the ancestral forms. But as per your syllabus, the Galstang's theory, or in the Young's books, it was advocated that Galstang's view is considered so far the most acceptable view, because it talks about neoteny, pedomorphosis, and the natural selection. And this is one of the possibility, because the other researches, be it studying the molecular data or the gene expression, they also could not provide the exact relationship between the deuterostome larvae of echinodermates or the existing chordates or the fossil records of early chordates.